Chapter 2. Who knew chimps were so into politics? I turned to Lizzie and asked, "What's Dodger talking about?" She was all flustered, and I noticed she didn't look me in the eye. "Hi, Willie," she said brightly as she came over and gave me a hug. Jeepers, Lily was giving me a hug. Lizzie was giving me a hug. As she let go of me, Lizzie kept talking a mile a minute. "How are you? Did you have fun traveling with your dad? Did you have smooth flights?" I really hate when I'm on a bumpy flight. I remember this one time, on the way back to England to visit my Aunt Mimi, we hit this massive turbulence over the Atlantic. It was just dreadful. My teacup flew up into the air and flipped over. I got tea all over this horrid bald man who was sitting next to me, and he said, "Lizzie!" I shouted. No, he didn't say Lizzie, actually. In fact, I'm not sure I ever told him Lizzie, stop trying to distract me. What's this whole election thing about? Lizzie practically turned green, so I knew that whatever was going on, hearing about it wasn't going to send me to a happy place. As she gathered herself to speak, I noticed that Dodger was trying to crawl under my bed to hide. I guess he had never noticed how much stuff I shoved down there, so my mom would think my room was clean. Lizzie said, "The election, right then. The election. Well, the thing is, there's a selection, for the student council president, and James Beeks is running for president with Craig Flynn as his vice president. See, every year at our school, the fifth graders elect a president and a vice president for the grade, and those officers are also the president and vice president of the student council. Really, it's quite a fascinating blend of British and American political." I cleared my throat and tried to ignore the dirt-encrusted sweat sock that Dodger's hand was pushing out from under the bed. "Lizzie, I know all about how our school's elections work, so stop stalling. I want to know what this has to do with us." Lizzie's voice was a squeak. "With us?" she asked. "Well, I've always thought that everyone should get involved in the process of government. Don't you agree?" I glared at Lizzie as Dodger shoved another disgusting sock into view behind her. "Involved? What do you mean involved?" A half-eaten slice of pizza covered in dust bunnies and clumps of hair slid out from Dodger's hiding place. Then it slid back in, and in the silence while Lizzie tried to figure out what to tell me, I could distinctly hear munching noises. Ew! I was just about to gag when Lizzie finally spoke. If I thought that she was talking fast before, this took the speed to a whole new level. "Well, Dodger and I had a little, accident with James Beeks and Craig Flynn. Because Dodger was you today and all." "What do you mean Dodger was me?" I heard a little choking sound coming from under the bed, and Dodger's hands appeared. Now Lizzie looked more puzzled than afraid. "You know," she said, "with the potion, just like you planned." Dodger pulled himself out from under the bed and sat up, coughing and grabbing at his throat the whole time. "Potion?" I asked. What was Lizzie talking about? Now I was more confused than ever. "Dodger, what in the world is going on?" Dodger suddenly made a little burping noise, and something flew into his hands. "Nothing, dude. Just a little pepperoni hairball." "Arg," Lizzie said. "Dodger told me everything this morning on the way to the bus stop. How the great Lasorda gave him this special potion that will let him look like you for the day, and that he could start phase 2 of your life improvement plan." "Life improvement plan?" "Right, just like Dodger said. He came to school disguised as you and started looking for ways to make you popular. The great Lasorda said that because Dodger is so naturally fun to be around, he should have no problem making your social life more, interesting. That's weird, because in the past month, my only friend has moved away, a magical chimp has pledged to be my new best friend for life, and I had somehow become good pals with the girl I used to call dumb old Lizzie from England. Wasn't my social life interesting enough?" I stared at Lizzie, speechless. I had plenty to say, but I was having trouble deciding which of my crazy friends to shout at first. Behind her, Dodger wiped his hands with one of the socks, which he proceeded to shove back under my bed. And then my little sister Amy came stalking into the room, wearing a bizarre hat with flaps and my dad's checkered raincoat. She was carrying a magnifying glass. "Aha!" she shouted in a boomingly dramatic voice. "Just as I suspected, Watson." Lizzie said, "Hello, Amy. How are you today?" Amy replied disdainfully, "I am not Amy. If you had any powers of detection whatsoever, you would infer from my clothing that I am Sherlock Holmes, the greatest detective of all time." And I know you are keeping a secret. Jeepers, this was just getting better and better. As if having an invisible house guest wasn't hard enough already, now I had a deluded second grader sniffing around the joint, looking for signs of mystery and intrigue. What secret? I asked in my best innocent voice. Lizzie and I were just having a friendly chat. Amy hunched over her magnifying glass and scuttled around the room like a crab, examining the floor as she went. Dodger nearly tripped over himself twice as he tried to stay ahead of her. She was talking to herself under her breath, saying detective-ish things like, interesting, very interesting. Then all of a sudden she stood bolt upright and shouted, Eureka! I knew it! Lizzie and I both said, Knew what? Amy scooped up the filthy sock, waved it under our noses, and exclaimed, Knew I'd find this. I was baffled and somewhat irritated. Wow, Amy, you found one of my socks in my room. You're a genius. But what does that mean? The name is Sherlock, and the sock is a very important clue. Note the grimy exterior, which indicates that the sock has been worn repeatedly without washing. Take notice, too, of the powerful scent emitted by this discarded garment. Finally, observe this. She pinched something on the sock and held it up to the light. A blue hair. Oh boy, I had a sinking feeling that Amy wasn't going to let go of this one. She paused for a moment and then said in her normal voice, By the way, Willie, can you help me with my math homework? I'm kind of busy right now, but I guess if you make it quick. Alright then, I'm a little confused. What does 1 plus 1 make? I wondered how a kid with such an amazing imagination could be so bad at math. Amy, 1 plus 1 equals 2. I see. And there's one of you in this room, plus one of Lizzie, right? Amy said. Then she suddenly switched back to her Sherlock voice and asked, Then why did I hear 3 voices in this room before I came in? With a triumphant smirk, Amy flipped the sock in my direction and glided out of the room. I slammed the door behind her. Wow, Lizzie sighed. Yeah, I said, removing the sock from the front of my sweater. Wow, now about that election. We didn't mean it, Willie. It just kind of happened, Dodger said. 1 minute, everything was going great. I drank the potion, pretended to be you for a couple hours, took that quiz I was telling you about, watched the cake fall on James Beeks. It was all fun and games. Then all of a sudden, everybody was yelling at each other, and I had to stick up for Lizzie. The next thing I knew, Lizzie took over. The next thing he knew, Miss Starsky was walking out of the room to the water fountain so she could wash the cake off her shoes. As soon as she left, Beeks said, Shut up, Wimpy. You think you're so great now just because you got one lucky game-tying hit in one stupid baseball game. Well, I think you're ridiculous. You got one hit, and all of a sudden a few people pat you on the back and you have your dorky English girlfriend and you think you're popular. Is that it, Ryan? Do you think you're all popular now? Dodger took over the story. I tried not to say anything. I really did. But dude, he called Lizzie dorky and he insulted your big hit. So I just said, maybe. Then Beeks poked me in the chest and said, maybe what, Wimpy? So I said, maybe I'm popular and maybe you should wipe the cake off your head before you call somebody else ridiculous. After that, things got a little out of hand. I shouted, After that, things got a little out of hand? How much more out of hand could they possibly be? Dodger and Lizzie hemmed and hawed for a while more, and little Sherlock Holmes knocked on the door 2 more times, but I eventually got the whole story. How Mrs. Starsky had come back from the hall with her shoes dripping and separated Dodger and Beeks, how they had kept yelling at each other until Mrs. Starsky had written both my name and Beeks's on the board. How Beeks had challenged Dodger to run against him for student council president. How Flynn had muttered, Yeah, right, Wimpy for president. How Dodger had stopped for a second to think, and how in momentary silence Lizzie had slammed her palms down on her desk and shouted, We accept. After Lizzie left and Dodger fled to the inside of his magic lamp for the night, I got ready for bed. While I was lying there in the dark, I kept picturing the whole nightmare classroom scene in my head and wondering what the heck I was going to do about it. Finally, before I drifted off into the night of nervous, tortured half-sleep, I decided what I would have to do. I'd just get up in the morning, march off to school, and tell Miss Starsky that I was sorry, but I couldn't run for president after all. I mean, Dodger had gotten all worked up in the spirit of the moment and put me in a bad situation. But I had spent years carefully avoiding the spotlight. If I backed down, Beeks would probably make fun of me for a while, but soon things would be back to normal. I would be happily invisible. Beeks would get elected just like he had every year since kindergarten, and life would go on. I figured, how hard could it be? It's not like one day of being absent could change my life forever, right?